This is Warbird Radio.
And welcome back to Warbird Radio. I'm Matt Jolly. A serious topic this month as we dive into our annual discussion on safety. Safety Month, the month of March, here on Warbird Radio, entirely devoted to the topic of Warbird safety. You're coming out of maintenance. If you're like me, your airplane right now has no fuel hoses or something major has been worked on. What do you do when you push this thing out of the hangar? What do you do for yourself? I just went and got my medical renewed with Dr. Stan Music. A shout out to him. Did a great job down there in Peachtree City. Try to get yourself ready. Taking the classes online, doing the brush-ups, going to INWOC, the National Warbird Operator Conference. I got back from that where I was talking to Doug, actually, and Doug Rozendaal. Birds are chirping, spring is in the air, and warbirds are starting to come out of the hangar. What is your number one piece of advice before someone rolls an airplane out and gets in it for the spring?
It's great. It's great to be with you, Matt. And, I am passionate about safety. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and sadly, my list of dead friends is long. And I was the chairman of the Stand-Eval Committee at the CAF, I don't know, probably 20 years ago when we had a rash of accidents and our insurability came into question. And I kind of fell into the safety role there. And it made it a passion, I guess, unbeknownst to me, to pursue this safety thing. And to answer your question, I think the single most important thing we can do as aviators, whether that's warbirds or any other type of aviation, is recurrent training. Everybody needs to subject themselves to some critique and another set of eyes and be on a continuous quest for quality improvement.
How many hours do you have in the P-51? I want to cut you off because I'm going somewhere with this.
In the neighborhood of 1,000.
And you just got back from Stallion 51 with Lee Loudermilk.
That's right. Yeah. So we decided at the CAF Red Tail Squadron that everybody was going to go take a recurrent at Stallion. And the joke I made was I've been flying the Mustang for over 20 years and finally went to Kissimmee to learn how to fly it. And it was a great experience. I did learn some things and got some critique. Marco, I've known Marco since he started with the Snowbird team, again, almost 20 years ago. And we became fast friends when we first met. And this was our first opportunity to share a cockpit. And yes, I learned some things about the Mustang, and I learned, and that's what it's all about. It's about expanding your horizons and developing the muscle memory so that when something bad happens, you're ready for it, because, the reality is we don't rise to the occasion. We sink to the level of our most recent recurrent training.
Yeah, that is so true. I like what you've added. That's you hear that all the time. You don't rise to the occasion. You sink to your level of training. But adding that one word there, recurrent training, really drives it home. I mean, that you're absolutely correct. So recurrent training.
Yes, and a lot of people, if you've owned a T6 for 20 years, you might think, well, I've got not much left to learn about the T6, and you may not have much left to learn about the T6, but you might have some stuff to learn about yourself. And, there's a friend of mine's an attorney in Des Moines, and he has a saying he calls Drew's Law. And Drew's Law is that 80% of the pilots think they're in the top 20%. And to Drew's Law, I add Rozendaal's corollary, which says that the reality is half of us are below average.
Right.
Well, and so
there you go.
We do have to, left to our own devices, we'll regress. We're not going to get better without some training and some critique. And that's what it takes. And, there's some really good examples in industry. Several years ago, the MU-2 Mitsubishis suffered a terrible loss ratio. And the FAA actually came out with an SFAR, a special federal aviation regulation, which said that if you fly an MU-2, you have to take type specific training in that airplane. And overnight, the safety record of the MU2 improved dramatically to where today the safety record of an MU2 is comparable to a King Air. Well, I'm here to tell you I don't have a lot of time in an MU2, but I've flown one enough to know that it's a lot more challenging airplane to fly than a King Air. But training works, and we've proven that. The same's true with the Robinson helicopters. You know, they've got low energy rotor system, and I'm not a helicopter guy, but I know enough about it to be dangerous. And our Robinson helicopters have a low energy rotor system, and they were crashing these airplanes with great regularity. And the FAA again passed an SFAR. And said you have to take annual recurrent training to fly the R4, the R22, and the R44. And guess what? The safety record improved dramatically. Well, nobody wants to add regulations or FAA mandates, but the Cirrus, you'll recall, 15 years ago when the Cirrus was really taken off, they had a terrible safety record. And Cirrus, rather than doing it with regulation, they did it with culture. And the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association took it upon themselves to improve the quality of recurrent training in the Cirrus community. And they created a culture where if you don't participate in the recurrent training, I mean, they kind of shun you. I mean, you're not part of the team. You're not part of the club. And they're selling a lifestyle. Well, we're in the lifestyle business in Warbirds too. And we need to hold our peers accountable to some sort of regular recurrent training.
And the big thing here is don't let the ego get in the way. And if you say there are no egos in Warbirds, then I don't know. You haven't been around it very long. But,
yeah. Everybody's got an ego except you and me, of course.
Right,
and I'm wondering about you. But,
yeah. But the point being here, you got to find somebody that is willing and humble enough to go seek this recurrent, and then you got to find somebody that accepts it and says, "Here you go."
That's right, and the resources are there. When I started flying Warbirds over 30 years ago, it was kind of hard to find good recurrent training. But now, partly because the Living History Flight Experience program has mandated that, all organizations that are in one of those programs have to have a formal training program. And so as a result of that, they've kind of set a bar, and organizations have mimicked that on their airplanes that aren't on the recurrent training program. So the RIDES program has done two things. Number one, it's increased cycles. The people that are flying ride flights are getting a lot more proficiency in currency. And number two, it mandates both both ground and flight training. And all three of those are good things. Currency, proficiency, and training. That's a combination for improvement.
And let's dive into this just a little bit more, because if you have an aircraft that, let's say it's a one-off or there are very few of, I'm assuming that your advice would be type is not all that critical when you go get recurrent training. It would be great if you could do it in a T-28 or a T-6 if that's what you own, and there's a lot of folks out there that can help you with that. But if you have some one-off, or if you have a single-seat fighter or whatever it might be, the important thing is finding a good instructor to fly with that's going to help you knock the rust off when you're coming out. First of all,
if you're flying any single-seat fighter, the T6 is the greatest trainer that ever was. And part of the reason why it's such a good trainer is because as an instructor, you don't have to say much. The airplane does all the talking. And, in the slow flight regime in a T6, if you're ham-handing the airplane or not doing the right things, the airplane will reach out and touch you, and you'll end up in your back, or
pretty quick,
or worse, very quickly. So that's one of the reasons why the T6 is just such a fantastic trainer, and it has interesting stall characteristics, much like the heavier fighters. It's a lot cheaper to operate, but yes, it is. One of the big things we're working on in recurrent training is not the airplane; it's the pilot. And, any type of training, I got a seaplane rating, I don't know, 15, well, more than that, probably 20, 25 years ago, I got my seaplane rating. And, it's flying a Cub on floats at Jack Brown is not difficult. But I was flying with an old boy and who was just, a good, cool head. And he said, never get close to the water in a seaplane without looking at the wingtip. And I look out at the wingtip, and you see that angle of attack. You can see the angle of the wing relative to the horizon, and you know you're going down a little bit, and you can interpolate that angle between the chord line of the wing and the direction that you're headed, the relative wind. And just that little tidbit that I learned getting my seaplane rating, I've used that so many times. When I was flying a Corsair one time, and the pitot tube was blocked. It got wasp nest in it, and it was blocked. And just looking at that wingtip coming down final, I knew I was right in the groove. And it's just every time you get more training, even if it's in something somewhat unrelated to the Warbird world, you're going to pick up some pieces. And, if you're flying a Cub that's, loose in the tail and requires a lot of rudder, it's going to increase your rudder awareness, which is always good in a Warbird. Getting training in anything is good, but if you can do it in the type or, again, something similar to what you're flying, that's even better.
And today there are so many folks out like Tom Richard. I mean, there's just great people out there that can get out there and do it. And if you, we got CAF wings scattered all across the country, and they have ground schools in numerous different types. And most CAF wings, if you're a member of the local community, will allow you to sit in on the ground school for the cost of the materials. But if they insist that you join, it's just not that expensive, and the training is worth what you would spend for that. So, get whether it's the CAF or another museum locally, get involved with your museum, even if you own your own airplane, and participate in their safety training. And they've got check pilots with vast experience in all different types of airplanes that might be willing to go do some flying with you and with a pilot and up their game a little bit. Yeah, great point. I want to talk about maintenance because we had a conversation that you and me did, and the interesting thing that came up is we're not losing pilots, and when I say losing, as in fatalities, these accidents that occur, 10 pilots a year or whatever it is, that it seems to be averaging out to. We're not losing these folks to maintenance concerns. So the engine out and stuff like that is really not what's leading to this. It's often, as you say, we're not inventing new ways to kill ourselves. It's often these sort of behavioral issues that cause accidents. But my question is, are we doing a good job on the maintenance side, or are we just getting lucky? What are your thoughts on that?
The maintenance, again,
engine failure specifically, right? I mean, right. Take off, lose an engine. What is it? Training that is keeping us safe in these areas because we practice this stuff, or is it, we're just getting lucky? I don't know how that data breaks out. I haven't looked at it.
Well, first of all, again, I've been at this a long time, and when I started flying Warbirds, again, over 30 years ago, a lot of Warbirds were nothing more than a tired freighter with a paint job.
Right.
Today, many of the Warbirds that I fly are some of the best maintained, well-equipped airplanes that I fly, and that includes some turbine corporate type airplanes. It's not uncommon at all to go fly a B-25 or a DC-3 that's absolutely a squawk-free airplane. And it's 75, 80 years old, but a lot of these airplanes have had really thorough restorations, and it's not uncommon at all to have a totally squawk-free airplane. And I can tell you, I've flown King Airs and Cheyennes and things like that, and it's very uncommon when you're talking about a 35-year-old turbine airplane to have a squawk-free airplane. It's just really hard to do. So the quality of maintenance, partly because the value of the airplanes has increased, and partly because we're doing better. We've raised awareness about how people need to take care of these things and be safety conscious. But so the maintenance is better, but that does not mean that anytime you're flying a Merlin or a 2800, a high performance 80-year-old airplane, that maintenance and engine failures are not and shouldn't be very close to top of mind awareness. You need to be thinking about that all the time. And I know I do. I think about, what's below me and what kind of terrain I'm flying over. as I go cross country, and because
I think about that
it's part
too.
of our responsibility.
But what keeps coming up and what drives this home to me is the fact that those are not historically the things that are killing us.
No,
the things that are killing us are our inability to make a decision, or make a good decision, I should say.
Well, one of the most common words that you will find in Warbird accident reports is impromptu. Okay?
Right. Impromptu low-level aerobatics, whatever it might
impromptu anything. One of the most relaxing things I do in a Warbird is a solo aerobatic routine, because I'm over an airport at an air show.
Right.
I'm over an airport. All right. I own the airspace. There's no traffic, and I'm doing something that I've done many, many, many times before. And it's very, one could say it's almost too comfortable. I might need to raise my guard just a little bit, because it's practiced, and I know what speeds I need to be and make my gates. And it's just a very, very relaxing thing to do in a Warbird. But, the impromptu low pass, or the impromptu aerobatics, or, where you may not have a known energy value when you enter a maneuver and snap out of a loop and end up in a spin. Impromptu is a very common word in Warbird accident reports. And if you have a spontaneous idea, it's almost always a bad one.
Even if you brief it before you take off, and if you're flying solo, if you're doing a 20-minute thing in the evening, whatever it is, what I keep hearing is have that briefed, even if it's just with yourself. Have a plan before you take off, because that word impromptu oftentimes is what is listed first on that NTSB report.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And, we've got to do better, and we have all the tools we need. But we need to up our game in our business, because insurance rates and regulation, we're under a microscope with the FAA and the Warbird industry right now because of some recent accidents. And we just need to do a better job as an industry.
Well, I had you on. I could have a lot of other people on, but I had you on, one, because you're a friend and I respect you. But two, we're getting ready to roll out and go to an air show. You're going to be down in New Orleans with Red Tail and flying that very relaxing solo aerobatic routine that you were just talking about. And I'm looking forward to that, Doug. That's going to be a fun time to kind of knock the rust off and get back out. Is this your first show of the year?
Yes, this is the first show of the year. And actually, I was on the phone earlier today looking for a practice box so I can go do my spring warm-up practice. I'll be out in my rocket. I've got an F1 rocket, which has a very similar rhythm. And, at a lower power setting, I can very closely emulate the routine I do in the Mustang. And I'll be out practicing in that in the week ahead, and then pick up the Mustang next week and go out and do some practice routines at the surface in a box before we get to New Orleans to do the show. And I'm really excited and looking forward to a great season. Got a lot going on this summer, Mr. Mulligan and the Red Tail and some other airplanes. I'm looking forward to flying. So,
well, you fly so much stuff. You're always in something new, it seems like, which is one of the reasons you make such a great guest on Safety Month, is talking about this stuff.
I'm just a dumb farm kid from Iowa that's been incredibly richly blessed to fly some incredibly cool airplanes, and I have no earthly idea why it happens, but I'm sure happy and lucky that I get to do what I do, and I intend to do it for a while anyway.
Well, I'm just glad that you're in this business with us. By the way, your smoke oil company is called Pure White Smoke Oil. It's a lightweight paraffin based. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the secret to smoke oil is getting the right viscosity and the right flash point, and we've managed to find a refiner that makes an oil that really fits in the sweet spot of that.
And is it true 11 secret herbs and spices go into this?
Yeah, right. Yes. I'm the colonel and it's 11. Right. Yeah, not hardly.
There you go. Well, I think it's great, Doug. And if folks want to buy smoke oil from a fella that flies it, you can call Doug up and you can order a barrel or whatever you need.
Or a truckload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You provide that smoke oil, by the way, to some pretty big names in the business.
Yeah, we're approved for all the teams. We've sponsored the Titan Aerobatic team, and we're just really, I've been selling smoke oil to my friends for, 40 years. And about 10 years ago, we decided to take it up a notch and, created the brand, and it's been incredibly successul. And it's just one more avenue of the airshow business that I'm involved in. And, I've just really, we talk about the airshow family, but it truly is a family. And, most of the great experiences in my life and my great friends are people that I've met in aviation and in the airshow industry. And I'm just really, really incredibly fortunate and lucky to be a part of it. And that's why I'm so passionate about safety, is because, again, when those accidents happen, it's, almost always somebody that I know, and it's just hard. And it's, as I said at the outset, my list of dead friends is long, and I have a passion to do what I can to fix that.
Well, that's well said. Now, look, when you go back out there and you start getting into these airplanes, the pre-flight is so absolutely critical. And we're going to get into that some on the next episode for sure. But whatever you're doing, take that extra time, make those decisive decisions like Doug was just talking about, and just sort of slow down on these first few flights. Go out and practice whatever you need to do. And for goodness sake, don't do anything impromptu. Doug Rozendaal, thanks for coming on. Any last thoughts here?
Well, again, we don't rise to the occasion. We sink to the level of our recent recurrent training, and recurrent training works. And if you haven't had any recurrent training in the last year, look at the guy in the mirror you see in the morning when you're shaving and make a commitment to him to fix that. And if we would do nothing more, I'll guarantee you we'd have less accidents next year, and our insurance rates would improve as well. And those are two really important things.
Yeah, because Warbird pilots are not known for being lavish spenders. We spend everything on the airplane, but for the rest of the time, you're ordering off the dollar menu. I mean, I get it. I get it. Everybody's kind of cheap.
It's an incredibly expensive hobby.
There you go.
And we have to, but it's we're so fortunate to be a part of it. And with that comes the responsibility to do what we can to do better.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Doug Rozendaal, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to seeing you down there in New Orleans here in just a few more days for the NAS New Orleans Air Show with Red Tail. Going to be a great
We'll be there.
All right, Doug. Thanks again. All right.
Thank you.
Listen, what you got to do right now is go in there and subscribe to Warbird Radio. If you haven't already done it, it's easy enough to do. Just go like, follow, and subscribe right there on the website. Sign up for the newsletter. We send it out with every new episode. We're going to continue our conversation on safety this spring as we get ready. We'll be hearing from some really cool people. In fact, we just booked, this is going to be great, a new guy in the engine business who's actually an old-timer when it comes to his knowledge, but he's a young guy. We're going to be talking to Corey Miller from Strix Aero here in just a few more days, and we'll have all of these shows available right there at Warbird Radio, plus stuff from the archive. Also back here very, very soon, a crowd favorite. Hartman and Hines will be returning to the airwaves. They sent over a new episode just the other night, so I'm looking forward to having Mike Hartman and Andy Hines back on. That's it for Warbird Radio for this episode. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you at a show real soon. So long for now.
Lock and load. This is Warbird Radio. Tune in. Take off.